Good day, I am Monica A. Beltran from BSc 1-1, and today I am going to discuss about EYSENCK'S conditioning theory and integrated theory. The conditioning theory refers to the behavioral process whereby a reaction or a response becomes more frequent to a given object or stimulus as a result of reinforcement, which is a reward for the response in a given situation. To put it another way, conditioning is a process through which an ineffective object or event becomes so effective that hidden responses become evident to everyone. The conditioning theory claims that learning is the process of creating a connection between stimuli and response. As a result, the stimulus-response theories are important to the conditioning theory principle. Classical and operant conditioning are two significant behavioral psychology principles. While both lead to learning, the methods are very different. It's also important to know how classical and operant conditioning differ from one another in order to fully understand how each of these behavior modification procedures might be applied. Classical and operant are the two main categories of conditioning. First, let's discuss about the classical conditioning. Maybe some of you are familiar with Ivan Pavlov, but to those who are not, Ivan Pavlov is a Russian physiologist. He was the one to describe about classical conditioning, and he applied it to his dog. In his famous experiment, Ivan Pavlov noticed dogs began to salivate in response to a tone after the sound had repeatedly been paired with presenting food. Pavlov quickly realized that this was learned response and set out to further investigate the conditioning process. This unconditioned stimulus naturally and automatically triggers salivating as a response to the food, which is known as the unconditioned response. After associating the neutral stimulus and the unconditioned stimulus, the sound of the bell alone will start to evoke salivating as a response. The sound of the bell is now known as the conditioned stimulus, and salivating in response to the bell is known as the conditioned response. Imagine a dog salivating at the sight of food. This is something the animal will perform on its own. This behavior comes naturally to him and does not require any training. The food is the naturally occurring stimulus. If you started to ring a bell every time you presented the dog with food, an association would be formed between the food and the bell. Eventually, the bell alone or the conditioned stimulus would come to evoke the salivation response. Another example for classical conditioning is when we are watching television program. While commercial breaks were once a neutral stimulus, repeated pairing with an unconditioned stimulus or having a delicious snack has turned the commercials into a conditioned stimulus. Now, every time you see a commercial, you crave a sweet treat rather. Now, let's discuss about the operant conditioning. Operant conditioning or instrumental conditioning focuses on using either reinforcement or punishment to increase or decrease a behavior. Through this process, an association is formed between the behavior and the consequences of that behavior. Consider a trainer who is attempting to teach a dog to retrieve a ball. When the dog successfully chases and retrieves the ball, it is rewarded with praise. The trainer withholds praise when the animal fails to recover the ball. The dog eventually develops an association between fetching the ball and earning the desired reward. Another example would be when I was in senior high school during face-to-face classes. When the result of our quizzes or exams came out, Those who got the perfect or highest scores will be given a chocolate as a reward for studying hard. And in that way, students will have the motivation to study more. Focusing on whether the behavior is involuntary or voluntary is one of the simplest ways to remember the distinction between classical and operant conditioning. Classical conditioning is the process of associating an involuntary reaction with a stimulus, whereas operant conditioning is the process of associating a voluntary response with a consequences. Eysenck is best known for his work in personality and intelligence and one of the most frequently cited psychologists. Eysenck was born on March 4, 1916 and he died on September 4, 1997. Now, let's talk about Eysenck theory. Eysenck theory of personality focused on temperaments which he believed were largely controlled by genetic influences. He utilized a statistical technique known as factor analysis to identify what he believed were the two primary dimensions of personality, the extraversion and neuroticism. He later added a third dimension known as psychoticism. Eysenck proposed a theory of personality based on biological factors, arguing that individuals inherit a type of nervous system that affects their ability to learn and adapt to the environment. Now, let's talk about the extraversion and introversion. Extroverts are sociable and crave excitement and change, and thus can become bored easily. They tend to be carefree, optimistic, and impulsive. They are more likely to take risks and be thrill seekers. According to Eysenck, this is because they are born with a neurological system that is understimulated, and they seek stimulation to restore that amount of stimulation. Introverts, on the other hand, lie at the other end of this scale, being quiet and reserved. They are already over-aroused and shun sensation and stimulation. Introverts are reserved, plan their actions, and control their emotion. They tend to be serious, reliable, and pessimistic. Let's move on to neuroticism and stability. A person's level of neuroticism is determined by the reactivity of their sympathetic nervous system. A stable person's nervous system will generally be less reactive to stressful situations, remaining calm and level-headed. Someone high in neuroticism, on the other hand, will be much more unstable and prone to overreacting to stimuli and may be quick to worry, anger, or fear. They are overly emotional and find it difficult to calm down once upset. Neurotic individuals have an ANS that responds quickly to stress. Last is psychoticism and normality. Eysenck later added a third trait or third dimension, which is psychoticism. It is the lacking in empathy, cruel, a loner, aggressive, and troublesome. This has been related to levels of testosterone. The higher the testosterone, the higher the level of psychoticism, with low levels related to more normal balanced behavior. Next is about the external factor, which is the education and the socialization. Education is what the school taught to us, and socialization is how we socialize to others in the community. Now, let's proceed to the integrated theory. An example of an integrated theory would be Charles Darwin's theory of evolution and Sigmund Freud's theory of psychosexual development. These two theories have been combined with other psychological theories to form the basis for much modern psychology. There are two types of integrated theory, the conceptual and propositional. Now, let's first discuss about conceptual theory. Conceptual integration seeks to synthesize theories on the conceptual similarity between the constituents theory. This is done by identifying concept and different theories. which may appear dissimilar based on the word or terminology used to articulate them, but actually share the same theoretical meaning or operationalization. Conceptual integration is very common to theory development, and a review of this type of integration essentially would involve a general review of criminological theory. Now, we're going to define the propositional. Propositional integration seeks to join theories based on the prediction each constituent's theories makes about crime and deviance, although they may have been derived through different concepts and assumptions. Propositional integration can be further classified into one of three possible subtypes based upon the way in which the constituents' theoretical propositions are linked together: up and down, or deductive integration, side-by-side or parallel or horizontal integration, and end-to-end or sequential integration. Up and down integration, also referred to as deductive integration, could be considered the classic form of theoretical integration. There are two types of up and down integration. In one type, propositions that are integrated in an up and down manner use the premise of one theory to derive the propositions or constituents theories. In particular, if theory A contains a more abstract or more general propositions from which theory B can be specified, then it is possible to integrate theory B with theory A, resulting in a single theory. Alternatively, if both theories A and B are able to elaborated using assumptions more general than either theory individually, then it could be possible to synthesize the theories together in order to create a new theory C, which contains parts of both constituents theories. The former approach is often referred to as theoretical reduction, while the latter is referred to as theoretical synthesis. Some scholars argue that deductive integration is the only true type of theoretical integration. Side-by-side integration or parallel integration is most often accomplished by partitioning the subject matter of interest into distinct categories and using different theories to explain each. As a result, much attention is often given to the criteria used to partition the subject matter, and only then focuses on the theories which can best explain each category. Theories integrated end-to-end specify the propositions of one theory sequentially, following the propositions of another. As such, end-to-end integration implies a temporal ordering among the causal variables in which the first set of variables influences the next set, in turn leading to the predicted outcome. Now, let's talk about Elliott's theory. This theory combines the principle of strain, control, and social learning theories into a single theoretical framework. These theories specify a causal pathway in which strain leads to the weakening of social bonds with conventional others and institutions, leading to greater association with deviant fears and the subsequent learning of antisocial and delinquent values. Specifically, adolescents who live in socially disorganized neighborhood or who are improperly socialized have an increased risk of perceiving strain. The perception of strains can lead to the weakening of bonds with conventional groups, activities, and norms. Such weakened bonds, in conjunction with high levels of strain, lead to the rejection of conventional values and encourage youths to seek out deviant peer groups. Such deviant association create the environment for the social learning and reinforcement of antisocial values and behavior. This essentially increases delinquent and criminal behavior. That's the end of our topic about the Eysenck conditioning theory and integrated theory. Again, I am Monica A. Beltran from BSc 1-1.